Right now, our phone lines have just been bogged.
I'm gonna go tomato, zucchini, kale, beans.
Happy, relieved. We're looking forward to getting started. We are ready to go.
Whether you are a green thumb or waiting for an opportunity just to step onto the green, the province took some small steps today towards getting back to business. Allowing parts of the economy to reopen depends in part on the number of new cases of COVID-19. And today the Premier said those numbers are headed in the right direction. Here's where things stand tonight. There are 370 new cases recorded today. It's the lowest number of new cases since April 29th, when there were 347 new cases recorded. On Sunday, the province reported 434 new cases. 984 patients are in hospital compared to 1,000 people on Sunday. 225 people are in intensive care. On Sunday, the province reported 232 patients in ICUs. So today, the province eased some of the restrictions on our economy, allowing a select list of seasonal businesses to officially reopen. While business owners welcome the news, some say they weren't given enough advance notice and have concerns about implementing some safety protocols. Farah Morelli joins us live from the Davenport Garden Centre. Now, and Farah, what are you hearing from these businesses?
Well, Dwight, the one thing everyone I spoke to could agree on is they support this move. They're happy to be open, but the issue seems to be around timing. The businesses that I spoke to said that they only found out they were allowed to reopen at the same time we all did, which was Friday afternoon. So that left them 3 days to try and figure out how to implement these strict safety protocols. And while places like the Davenport Garden Centre have had those in place for a while and they are open, some businesses don't have them and they're closed today. At the East End Garden Centre, it wasn't hard to find happy customers today.
I bought some herbs so I can grow my own herbs. I'm really excited about it.
This is the time, and it's one of the few things we can do easily these days.
We have 6-foot distance. We have arrows going down this way.
Owner Judy Clark says they have the proper protective equipment and measures in place to operate safely.
It's going to be pretty crazy here.
But other newly opened businesses aren't sure they do.
I think it's still too early. First of all, people that are coming in here, they're not, not all of them are wearing masks or gloves. And, as far as I know, I don't know if they have it and they don't know if I have it.
On Friday, the province revealed a list of seasonal businesses allowed to open their doors today, so long as they follow strict safety protocols. But 3 days' notice means some businesses simply can't.
My first initial reaction is obviously I wish we had a little more notice. Being a Friday at 1 o'clock.
The Ontario General Contractors Association says it's excited by the announcement, but it will take a few extra days to bring in safety measures across the board.
So that required us, implementing new procedures, signage, sanitation stations, a whole gamut of, protocols.
There's never a decision that one person makes. I don't make a decision by myself. I always consult with people. We try to give them a few days.
The Premier said today the province did consult with stakeholders before his announcement on Friday, and it's working to make sure businesses have the PPE they need. And while some are scrambling, others, like this golf course, say they've been ready for weeks, even implementing major changes in anticipation of opening.
So the golf ball will never actually drop into the hole. And will bounce off instead. So, lots of little things like that to make sure that everybody is safe. We could be up and running probably within 24 hours.
Dwight, the big question on many people's minds tonight is what's going to be next to reopen. The messaging that we heard from the Premier today was very positive. He said that Ontario is trending in the right direction. He even urged other types of retail businesses to start getting ready, whether that means ramping up their stock of PPE, bringing in a plan to have curbside pickup. So some very positive messaging from the Premier about more businesses that could be opening.
Well, Farah, we keep hearing over and over, testing and tracking the cases is the key to easing restrictions. So what are we hearing from the government today about the level of testing in the province?
Yeah, it's interesting, Dwight. A lot of the positive messaging that we heard from the government today was about testing. For weeks, the government has been criticized for being too slow to increase the number of tests being done, COVID tests being done in this province. But today, we heard from the Premier that they've actually surpassed the 16,000 a day tests a day goal that it had set. They say they've been expanding contact tracing. So a lot of positive messaging when it comes to testing. The Premier even went as far as to say that we can maybe expect some more announcements about openings as early as this week. Dwight.
Seems we are moving in the right direction. Thank you for that, Farah. Several more provinces have started to cautiously ease coronavirus restrictions as everyone tries to adapt to the new normal of this pandemic. Quebec's premier has decided to back off from plans to allow retail businesses in the Greater Montreal area to reopen today.
The great majority of hospitalization caused by coronavirus are currently happening in the Montreal region. This is why I'm announcing today that we're pushing back the reopening of non-essential businesses in the Montreal region to May 18.
The Legault government has been under pressure amid concerns that transmission rates in Montreal remain high. Quebec accounts for more than half of Canada's 60,000 cases. Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Maritime provinces slowly started loosening restrictions around outdoor recreation activities last week. British Columbia is yet to announce its reopening plans. If you're heading to Longo's to grab some groceries, take your mask. It is now mandatory at the supermarket.
I think that's a good idea, just to make sure that, you don't get people sick. And then, I think it's a better way to do it.
I don't mind. I don't mind. It's for everybody. Yeah, I feel good.
It's a good idea, especially because it prevents other people from catching it if you don't know that you have COVID-19.
The new mask policy went into effect at Longo's stores today. It's the first major Canadian grocery chain to mandate mask usage by customers. Longo's employees were already required to wear masks or face shields. The store is providing disposable masks for customers who don't bring one. Over the weekend, a third personal support worker died after contracting COVID-19. She worked at the Downsview long-term care facility in Toronto. The rising deaths are adding to a discussion over whether all healthcare workers should be given the option of wearing N95 masks to protect themselves. Lisa Shing has more.
For some healthcare workers, wearing a surgical mask to see COVID-19 patients is enough. They trust the public health advice and the research.
I have to always, practice what I preach, and I'm recommending this. I've seen many COVID patients right here in hospital, and I am going there with my surgical mask, gown, and my face shield, and nothing more.
For others, the provincial directive that workers wear surgical masks doesn't go far enough. On Friday, CBC News spoke with a personal support worker who didn't want to be identified about testing positive for COVID-19. That's after working with a resident who contracted the virus.
We're not safe in the surgical mask. If the surgical mask, anything splash on it, it comes right in. It penetrates the surgical mask. It's just like a piece of paper you put over your face.
You don't only have a finite supply of masks, you have a finite supply of healthcare workers.
Several healthcare unions want members to have the choice of wearing N95 masks instead of surgical ones.
If there was a question about whether something could be, for example, airborne, then we needed to err on the side of caution.
N95 masks are primarily used during procedures that could generate aerosol particles, like during intubation. Most of these procedures are done in hospitals.
Surgical masks are what is required for COVID-19, according to the Chief Medical Officer of Health. Of course, evidence is always evolving.
Ontario's top doctors said today the evidence doesn't support N95 masks in regular healthcare settings, even though other countries like the U.S. and Australia recommend it. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
The province is making arrangements to allow hospitals to start doing elective procedures again. Today, the health minister described how that might look.
As we develop our plan to open up elective procedures for cardiac cancer surgeries and other orthopedic surgeries, that is one of the suggestions that we have a COVID-free hospital so that there's one that will deal with the COVID patients, one that will deal more with the elective surgeries.
Minister Elliott says the plan will depend on staffing at hospitals and the supply of personal protective protective equipment. She adds there will be likely more details on this in the days ahead.
On Thursday, April.
A devastating loss for the Jesuit community in Pickering. Rene Gopi House, a Jesuit infirmary, declared an outbreak of the virus in April. Within the last week, 4 priests and 1 resident who tested positive for COVID-19 have died.
The death of these 5 companions of ours is a struggle for us. It does fill us with grief. But at the same time, we see in their lives of service in Canada, in India, the fruitfulness that God's love can bring, and the way in which God's compassion is expressed through our hands and through our actions. And remembering that and noticing that and celebrating that helps us to recognize that these deaths don't have the last word, that God's creativity and love are continuing to act even in this time of struggle.
5 people in total have died at the infirmary due to coronavirus complications, including 77-year-old resident George O'Neill. He passed away last Wednesday. Father Michael Hawkins died while Father Monjour was singing to him at the infirmary. He was 83 years old. Father Francis Xavier Johnson died yesterday. He was 93, while 92-year-old Father Norman Dodge died on Saturday. He was an advocate for seniors, establishing many outreach programs for them. Father Peter Larissy died at St. Michael's Hospital at the age of 91. Almost 20 years ago, he was shortlisted for a Governor General's Award for a book on Lauren Harris's work and life. A total of 16 residents and some staff at the infirmary have tested positive for COVID-19. A mother says she is worried about the long-term effects of visitor restrictions and what they're going to have on her son. Now, Joey is nonverbal and lives at a group home. The home is following provincial guidelines, but the Barrie mom says those guidelines need to be updated. Talia Ricci explains.
We wonder, what is he thinking? Like, where did we go? Why hasn't he seen his parents in 7 weeks? That's never happened in his 14 years of life.
Those are a few of Pamela Librelesso's greatest fears right now. Her son Joey has multiple disabilities and lives in a group home. That home isn't allowing visitors to protect residents and staff from COVID-19.
I alternate between being devastated and being motivated to affect change.
She wants to see changes to the government's guidelines to consider parents and caregivers essential visitors.
It's one thing for us to be upset about not seeing him. I think what's more upsetting is wondering what he thinks and what he understands is going on or doesn't understand.
In a statement, the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services says it recognizes this is a difficult time for families, but restricting non-essential visitors ensures the safety of residents and staff. But one advocacy group says there needs to be a balance between keeping people safe and accommodating their needs.
People that have intellectual delay and are also non-verbal are already vulnerable. It's known that they're more at risk.
Caldwell warns that for people with intellectual disabilities, a long absence from loved ones could increase their anxiety, stress, and impact their behaviors over time.
They are not visitors, they are vital parts of these children's and young adults' lives.
Librelesso says missing Joey's birthday on April 1st was a painful milestone for the family.
We chose to observe it in a very low-key way, knowing that at some point in the future, we will have that birthday party.
She hopes the government reconsiders. Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
Police have charged 2 men and a woman in connection to the shooting death of a teen last month. 15-year-old Jeremiah Ranger was fatally shot in the Jane and Shepherd area on April 26th. CCTV footage captured the shooting, which happened shortly after Ranger got into a white SUV with a friend. 20-year-old Hannah Gaudette turned herself into police today. She and 23-year-old Seymour Young were charged with second-degree murder. On Friday, police charged 22-year-old Tyler Young of Cambridge also with second-degree murder. Police did not say whether the 2 accused men are related. The pandemic has forced the City of Toronto to move about 1,000 people from shelters in 10 cities into vacant public buildings and hotels. Some were moved into their temporary apartments over the last few days. This is a look at them in their new homes and the emotion of having a place to call their own. You can see that too. Some for the first time in decades. But as Greg Ross tells us now, there's still calls for more help for Toronto's most vulnerable.
I was incredibly surprised and disappointed.
That was Thea Prescott's reaction when this sign from city staff was posted in George Hislop Park. It appeared to suggest that homeless people living in tents in the park had until 8 a.m. today to leave or they would be forced out. But this afternoon, Mary Ann Bedard, general manager of shelter and housing for the city, called into the mayor's press conference to clarify.
We will not clear people who are actively on the site who have not received any offer of an indoor placement.
That's welcome news to Prescott, who works at Sanctuary, a homeless advocacy group just steps away from George Hislop Park. In fact, it was Sanctuary that provided these tents for the homeless, among other things.
We've added porta potties. We've never had porta potties in 30 years of existence, and we're paying for them so that people have a safe and hygienic place to stay.
She says many of the people she deals with believe these tents are a better alternative than city shelters while waiting to get into permanent housing.
Because our shelters are still so overcrowded and aren't able to do 6 feet of distancing, there aren't places that are safe for people to stay.
Last week, the city announced it would be moving homeless people into more than 100 vacant apartments. Over the weekend, 68 people were moved into housing and 60 more will be moved in the next few days. The mayor promised there will be more to come.
And we'll be leaving no stone unturned in order to make sure that we find housing that is a better alternative to the encampments, which can then be cleared, and also that we find solutions that are more permanent.
Prescott says Sanctuary is making sure people who live in these tents have all applied for housing, and she says the city needs to act faster to keep them safe.
If the city continued to open hotels, continued to open old apartment buildings, continued to fill spaces, people want to go inside.
In the meantime, these tents aren't going anywhere. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Good news for gardeners. The city is opening its community and allotment gardens.
Park staff have been working with Toronto Public Health to map out a way to reopen the city's 81 community gardens and 12 allotment gardens safely since the province changed the emergency orders to allow for their opening. These gardens are very important to the residents who use them, and I'm glad that we've been able to find a way to get them up and running now, just in time for the planting season.
This comes after the province decided to lift restrictions and permit them, as the mayor said. The city will allow a phased approach in opening the gardens to ensure public safety. Community gardens will begin to open this week on a location-by-location basis. Allotment gardens will start to open next week. So that is good news for gardeners, Colette, but is the weather good news for gardeners?
I'm just checking my nails here. I was gardening on the weekend, Dwight. I'm like, did I get all the dirt out from under there? We had the weather for it, but yeah, speaking of it, I mean, 20 degrees yesterday, and what a departure today as much cooler air moved in. That breeze, I know the sun was nice once that started coming out into the afternoon, but that breeze from the northwest has been cool. And this cooler pattern for your gardening or whatever else you might be thinking of, this is what it looks like. Our temperature trend over the next 7 days. And I just want you to keep in mind that this line up here would be a seasonal average. So 16 to, by the time we're near the end of the 7-day period, nearly 18 degrees. And we're at 11, 13 with a southwesterly breeze. Like, that's the best we're going to do, it looks like, for Thursday. And then some much cooler air as we go towards next weekend. So it looks like we get into about mid-May before we're going to see things more seasonal and more consistent in terms of looking at those temperatures. These are the current readings. Markham, you're down to 7 degrees now. Oshawa at 9, 10 in the city. And those winds still coming from a north to northwesterly direction, but some of the gusts have been close to 50 kilometers an hour. We have clear skies tonight. That's going to allow the temperature to plummet. So actually, that's an interesting image. Some much cooler air is going to be coming in tonight. We drop down to 0, a very chilly start tomorrow, and then Dwight, clouds will increase late in the day. We'll have a lot of sunshine, though, before that, 11 degrees for the high.
And that's 0 overnight. Ouch. Thanks, Colette.
Yeah, you're welcome.
The weather update is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
Spring weather might have you wondering about the safety of some outdoor activities during the pandemic, especially exercising. Briar Stewart has more on the possible risks and the benefits.
When Neil Johnston heads out for a run these days, there's one piece of gear he isn't without.
It's a really, really small thing to do in order to potentially protect someone else.
While it makes his breathing more laborious, he started wearing the mask after he saw a series of studies online around what's called respiratory signature.
It's more out of consideration for others than myself. I know that the mask won't do me any particular amount of good inhaling other people's signature.
Last month, a Belgian researcher used this animation to illustrate that respiratory droplets exhaled from runners could travel more than 4 meters behind them. The research hasn't been peer-reviewed or published and has sparked a lot of debate. It doesn't address how likely it is that someone could be infected by COVID-19 this way.
Is it impossible? Strictly speaking, no, it isn't impossible, but it would appear to be a lot less likely.
Raymond Tellier is a medical microbiologist currently doing COVID-19 testing. He says research shows the virus can remain in the air for several hours but get spread out through ventilation.
Chances are if you're outside and someone runs by you, you're only near them for a short time. And even if they did have COVID-19, scientists still don't know how much of the virus needs to be concentrated in the air for someone to become infected.
Given the unlikelihood of becoming infected while out for a walk, people are encouraged to exercise. These researchers are surveying hundreds to find out just how outdoor activity is helping people cope.
Well, we're stating that physical activity and doing it outdoors might be better for mental health. We're also realistic to following medical health officer guidelines to understanding that there's certain locations where that's going to be more challenging.
Such as a crowded path on a bright sunny day, which is why even with the mask, Neil Johnston tries to keep his distance. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Vancouver.
Getting hundreds of calls from universities and governments from all over the world.
After the break, more on the Toronto startup that's bringing back the social part of post-secondary school in a virtual world. York University is investigating what it calls an extremely serious cyber attack. York says the attack happened Friday evening and that a number of its servers and workstations were affected, adding its IT department quickly severed the school's internet connection and shut down many of its online programs after the attack began. The university hasn't said if any sensitive information was stolen. York is advising everyone at the university to reset their passwords. Students and digital security experts say York needs to release more information about exactly what happened. Universities and colleges are looking for new ways to accommodate students during the pandemic, and some are turning to a Toronto startup for help. Tech Adaptica developed a virtual campus, as Philippe de Montigny shows us, is being used by students of all ages.
During the lockdown, Ashley Hansen is taking classes on a virtual campus. It's like a video game. The grade 8 student created her own avatar, and every day she has to meet up with her teacher and classmates.
I've just been able to transition so easily and actually learn even better than
She says the alternative, video conferencing, has its limits.
One of the issues with online learning is you're not having as much interaction as you would in normal classes.
Since schools and universities moved courses online, many have reached out to the Toronto startup behind this virtual campus.
We're getting hundreds of calls from universities and governments from all over the world.
Tech Adaptica is trying to tackle a major issue with current e-learning tools: the lack of student engagement.
We created the virtual campus because we saw that the current technologies are not really offering a great alternative to the real world.
George Brown College helped beta test the technology. It's considering signing up to the virtual campus for its year-end showcase.
What's really attractive to us is that the possibility that you could have students sitting beside their work and then being able to welcome people visiting and talk about their work.
The interactive platform also allows users to take part in other courses and conferences they might otherwise not have access to at their school.
It fills a void, it fills a need of something that we couldn't provide and we would not be able to provide.
Instructors and students can log on from pretty much anywhere in the world. So far, 25 school boards across Ontario have signed up, including Toronto Catholic, York Catholic, Dufferin Peel, and both Durham boards. Philippe de Montigny, CBC News, Toronto.
Thank you so much, St. Mike's, for everything you're doing. Take care. Bye-bye.
We want to be able to provide enough orders to the restaurants to actually make a difference in their sustainability and viability.
A double dose of support, how a grassroots initiative is helping frontline workers and local restaurants at the same time. That's coming up. In Italy, it is the first day that some COVID-19 restrictions will be lifted. The country had been under lockdown for 9 weeks and has suffered the second highest number of coronavirus deaths in the world. Today, some businesses are beginning to reopen. They still have to comply with physical distancing rules, but many Italians are wary of returning to normal, while others are critical of how the government is handling the process. Megan Williams has more now from Rome.
Today is the first day of Italy gradually opening up its 2-month lockdown. Now, for 5 million people who are going back to work in the construction and manufacturing sector, this is really good news. For a lot of other Italians, it's disappointing because not much changes. You still need something called un'autocertificazione, a self-declaration form, which I have here, to step outside, where you have to explain who you're going to visit, whether it's a distant relative that's on the acceptable list for Italians, for the Italian government, or whether it's to, for a particular errand or to a job. Italians still have to wear masks outdoors when they're within a meter of another person, or 2 meters if they're exercising. You need to wear the mask when you go to the supermarket as well. In a way, it has been a big change. Certainly, when I woke up this morning, there was a lot of noise, of traffic noise. The kind of traffic that you're seeing here, well, certainly not as heavy as it used to be in Rome, is a lot heavier than it was just a few days ago. So there is a feeling that Italy is getting back to how it used to be. As I cycled through Villa Borghese Park this morning, there were a lot of people out. Now, again, it wasn't the crowds pre-lockdown, but there's a sort of a sense that spring has arrived, which of course it has already, but I think so many Italians have felt pent up inside for so long that today feels like the day that marks the end of the lockdown, even though a lot of stores and businesses won't open for a while yet. And of course, the big concern is that people need to keep that social distancing, they need to keep their contacts down, and they need to wear the mask when they're indoors and when they're close to anybody else outside. Megan Williams, CBC News, Rome.
Today, opposition leader Andrew Scheer criticized some of the benefit programs brought in by the Liberal government. He says the Canada Emergency Response Benefit and the student benefit will hurt the economy because recipients will take the money rather than take a job.
At a time when our economy needs stimulus, Justin Trudeau has given it a tranquilizer and risks creating labor shortages across the country. This failure must be reversed before it is too late. Canada's economic recovery depends on it.
The Prime Minister naturally disagrees.
I really look forward to facing that challenge of how we start to scale back the benefits and help people get back to work. We're not there yet. We're very much still trying to make sure that people are getting the support they need, even as the economy is starting to gradually reopen. Our focus is on keeping people safe. For now, we're still very much focused on how we help people through this.
A total of 9 million workers have received help from the CERB and the wage subsidy. A community project launched today in the city. Its goal is to help the Chinese Canadian community through the hardships it has faced because of COVID-19.
We are not only contending, just like everyone else, with anxiety and fear and trying to do our best. We are also starting to encounter things like racism or blame on top. And this is at a time when the Chinese community actually has been actively working to work together with the larger Canadian community to provide solutions.
Project Protect is working with all levels of governments, universities, and community organizations to close gaps for the Chinese community during this pandemic, whether it be stigma related to the virus or language barriers when it comes to assessing different programs. The project aims to keep the community connected during these isolated times. Through the online portal, Chinese-speaking counselors will be available to connect people to the services they need, offering live chat support over the phone, by text, or group chat. To learn more about the project, head online to their website, projectprotect.ca. A Toronto woman wanted to help local restaurants that were struggling during the pandemic, so she started Feed the Front Lines. It is a grassroots initiative that just kept growing, not just helping restaurants stay afloat now, but as Kelda Ewan shows us, it's also giving a boost to healthcare workers.
Jennifer Gittins and her husband Michael are busy packing meals inside their restaurant Little Sister, but it wasn't always like this. Jennifer still remembers the day in mid-March when she found out they would have to close due to the pandemic.
I had panic attacks. I was petrified.
They laid off all their staff. Then the phone rang. It was one of their regulars.
And she said, I have an idea.
That person was Adair Roberts.
I thought to myself, well, I want to help local restaurants in my neighborhoods.
She also works in healthcare and knows
even on the best of days, it's hard for people to actually get away and get a good meal.
And just like that, Feed the Frontlines TO was born. The idea is simple, to buy meals from small independent restaurants using donations and deliver them to frontline workers.
Thank you so much, St. Mike's, for everything you're doing.
It started with 3 of Adair's favorite restaurants, including Little Sister. After surpassing the $100,000 mark, 2 more restaurants were added.
We want to be able to provide enough orders to the restaurants to actually make a difference.
So far, Feed the Frontlines TO has raised over $230,000 and delivered 6,700 meals to hospitals and social services organizations across the city.
It's really nice to know that people on the outside are thinking of us and the inside.
Many of them writing messages of thanks along with their donation.
I think what is very humbling is when we drop the food off is how appreciative people are.
Little Sister prepares 300 to 500 meals a week for the workers. How has this helped your restaurant?
A, it's allowed us to pay our bills, pay my rent.
And B, it's allowed her to hire back some staff.
That just means the most to me.
For Adair, finding a way to help others cope has helped her to do the same.
I don't have a sense of powerlessness that I think you can have during these times because we're just all trying to help.
She says other cities, including Ottawa and Vancouver, have reached out wanting to start their own Feed the Front Lines. Kelda Ewan, CBC News, Toronto.
Colette, I think lots of folks wondering today, what was that from Mother Nature yesterday? Just a tease? Because we're right back into it.
We are. It's like a 10-degree difference just about in terms of where we were. These are the readings from yesterday at 4 p.m. 20 degrees, 21 in Hamilton on Sunday, 21 in Oshawa. And for us, it was the first time we got to 20 since October of last year. First time Windsor got to 23 since October of last year. But now let me roll this forward to this afternoon. Today, we got the sun to come out. That was nice, but those northwesterly winds, cool. And the best we could do was 11 degrees. So that's why, okay, 9, almost a 10-degree dive in our temperatures. Oshawa, now you are currently sitting at 9. We're at 10 degrees now in Toronto. St. Catharines, if you're watching us from there, you're 11 degrees at the moment. And there are those winds still coming from a north to northwesterly direction. But some of the gusts today were well over 40 kilometers an hour. It's not going to be as breezy tomorrow, even though generally the winds will be from the same direction, kind of a northwesterly flow later in the day. It's going to turn more towards the east, but we have to get there first. And in between, with these clearing skies, which was so nice to bring us the sunshine, it also means we don't have any kind of insulation tonight to hold in any little bit of the heat that we received today. So it is going to be cool. Overnight tonight, we're falling down towards freezing in the Markham area, Newmarket. You'll be just a little bit below. So clear skies bring cool temperatures. Now tomorrow we start off with the sunshine and we'll see it for most of the day, but watch this cloud cover start to creep up as we're getting into the afternoon hours. It's beginning to nose towards the GTA. So late day we're certainly going to see some increasing cloudiness. Not talking about precipitation. The system is staying to the south of us. It's just throwing those clouds our way. Overnight tonight, there are those chilly readings. It means chilly tomorrow morning. Still only about 2 degrees or so. That's even at 8 a.m. And then into the afternoon we climb very similar to today. But again, the winds won't knock that down so much in terms of how it feels because they'll be a little lighter. And earlier in the show, we took a look at the trend, right, for the temperatures, that they're really staying on the cool side. Not only that, with a -2 coming at the end of the week on Friday, Dwight, there's a chance we could even see a few flurries coming back our way. I'm just going to leave.
No, something's wrong with my... Did you say flurries?
No.
Okay, thanks, Colette.
All right, see ya.
Force around you.
May the 4th be with you. It is Star Wars Day, and our Star Wars fanatic Eli Glasner joins us after the break with a look at how the franchise is marking the official fan holiday. Next, stay with us. We'll be right back.
It's all true.
It is May the 4th, or Star Wars Day. Don't need a better reason to check in with our film critic, Eli Glasner. Eli, May the 4th be with you, sir. I know you've got some Star Wars news to share. But first, a little controversy. Let's start with that between the fans of the franchise and Disney.
Yes. So a little while ago, Disney put out a tweet getting ready to celebrate May the 4th. And so they put out this tweet saying, share your favorite Star Wars memories with us. And you might see we're going to do something special. But then they added this subtweet where they said, by sharing your message with us using May the 4th, you agree to the use of the message on your account and name in all media. And basically trying to, some people felt like this was Mickey Mouse kind of going to the dark side and like asserting his ownership over the May the 4th hashtag. And this is something that didn't start from Disney, didn't even start from Star Wars, just started organically back in the late 70s. As, of course, fans noticed that May the 4th was like May the Force be with you. And so that just became this organic way of celebrating Star Wars. But now Star Wars is owned by Disney, so it's become something very different. But I actually reached out to Casey Chiswick. He's an intellectual property lawyer in Toronto. He took a look at that tweet. He actually said, you know what? This is okay. As an intellectual property lawyer, doesn't give me heartburn because it's actually a good way of getting their consent for something, and it's not trying to own that hashtag. It's just saying, we want to use your thing in our campaign if you're replying to us. So he thinks that's fair in this case.
All right, let's get to the fans. You have some Star Wars suggestions for fans?
And I have some Star Wars stuff, just because I want to be able to prove my merits as a Star Wars fan. So of course you saw best Star Wars movie ever.
Fan, I would say fanatic, but that's okay.
Oh, but would a fanatic have this perhaps? So Probe Droid
yes,
just got that
a fanatic
recently.
would, yes.
And then here's one more. This is a samurai stormtrooper. How about that?
Oh,
so
that's
this
special.
Is part of the collection. So yeah. Now, if you have all those things, you're saying, Eli, but I need stuff to watch. Now, they have launched The Rise of Skywalker, the final movie. It is on Disney Plus this morning, but frankly, it's not very good. So what I would actually recommend is the best thing that's come out of Star Wars the past couple of years is actually the new TV show, The Mandalorian. Fantastic new series with this bounty hunter. And there's a new behind-the-scenes documentary series that popped up this morning on Disney Plus. It has Jon Favreau sitting down with all these different directors like Taika Waititi, like Bryce Dallas Howard, who worked on this series. And if you're a fan and you want to know, like, what's it like to be someone who just grew up with Star Wars and then to step into that world where you see Jawas, when you're directing a bounty hunter, where you're looking up at these giant props and living inside that world. Well, there's this new documentary series called The Disney Gallery, The Mandalorian, and the first episode is up on Disney Plus today. If you're still jonesing for more action, there's also a new season, the final season of Clone Wars. And this has been really exciting. It's an animated show, but we have the return of Darth Maul, we have Ahsoka, and all the rest. We have the clone troopers. This is about the events leading up to A New Hope. And it fills in some gaps of the Star Wars saga really quite nicely. It may be computer animated, but the emotion in the finale that just dropped today is certainly not artificial. So if you haven't had the pleasure, I'd say program your evening around that. Watch the last 4 episodes.
All right, Eli, not to be outdone by your samurai there, I had to go and get our newsrooms. We have a Chewbacca here, Eli. Just try to keep up with the Joneses, buddy. Just try to keep up. And so, there you go. Now, some exciting news. You do have word of a new Star Wars film. Maybe Chewbacca's coming back? I don't know, Eli. What's up?
You know, so the director is Taika Waititi, and if anyone could direct Taika Waititi, because he played that rock creature in Thor Ragnarok, if anyone could direct Chewbacca, it would be Taika Waititi. And they just announced that Taika Waititi is directing a new Star Wars feature film. So if you don't know Waititi, well, frankly, you should, but he's directed Thor Ragnarok. He directed the Hunt for the Wilder People. He directed Jojo Rabbit most recently. Really talented, irreverent director and actor from New Zealand. He has already directed an episode of that series I was mentioning, The Mandalorian. So he's already part of the Star Wars series, and I think he must have done such a great job of that they announced just this morning that Waititi will be directing and co-writing a new feature film. Now, we don't know where it's set in the Star Wars universe. It could be Chewbacca, the early years. It could be the making of R2-D2. It could be, Luke Skywalker, Ghost Dad. Who knows? We don't know. But if anyone can pull it off, I think it is Waititi. So that's really exciting news for Star Wars fans. We're going to have to wait a couple of years. Nothing in production right now. But, that's all right. We can go back to watching Empire and all the rest.
Eli Glasner reporting from home. May the 4th be with you, Eli, as you grow that Chewbacca mustache and beard. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you.
Come on, fans, you know you wanted more. And what may be an uncharacteristic use of the dark side, some youth in the Philippines dressed as Star Wars characters invaded neighborhoods near Manila today to deliver a message: respect the lockdown guidelines. Fans would have found it odd to see Darth Vader's good side as he had some stormtroopers handing out food and relief packs to those in need. The 4th is certainly with them today. Good job. After the break, today's May the 4th Hunt Frontline Hero. Stick around for that. We'll be right back. Residents near the junction celebrated the owners of their local variety store this weekend, covering the store in thank you posters. Tina and Costa Bottis have run St. John's Grocery and Variety for 38 years. Despite both being over 70 years old, they have kept the store open throughout the COVID-19 pandemic.
I think a corner store is I often think of it as the heart of the neighborhood, really. I knew that they'd be overwhelmed if we did any sort of grand thank you of any scale. You truly feel the heart and soul that's in this store, and I think that is one of the biggest draws that brings people into their store day after day. Tina and Costa will literally have whatever it is that you need, and if they don't have it, they go out and get it for you. Tina mentioned that she got that plexiglass protection because one of the community members wanted to protect them. She doesn't even know who it was, but that's the kind of love this community has for them because they would sort of never do that themselves, right?
They were adamant to remain open, and that dedication is part of who they are. They were originally farmers in Greece. They grew up quite poor. So it was their dream to come here and have a better life and provide a better life for myself and my brother. So it's just a day like today it makes me extremely emotional because I see all of their hard work come to light, and their kindness and their dedication to this community.
We service the community here in the variety store, the convenience store here for 38 years. And nice to meet lot of people and like a family to us. We try to support the community, for the difficult times. We go through all together, this time, and we live open they can buy milk, bread and anything. Not really cry, no, but they make it for emotional because, you see all the love and support they give to us, So, because I love them, we love them too, that's why,
That was really nice. This is the time that we really see the importance of community, Colin.
Yeah, and I love that. We love them too. Yeah, that was beautiful. Hey, Dwight, may the 4th be with you.
Ha, uh-oh.
Oh, yeah, no, I just wanted to share a favorite memory of mine.
I know you're a fan too, Colin.
Yeah, I was a huge fan, especially as a kid. I still am. And this was just a couple of years ago. It was Fan Appreciation Day at the ballpark. This was actually in Kansas with my family, so it wasn't here with the Jays. But at Walmart, they only had kids' sizes of costumes left, and I was making my sister dress up with me. She's 5 feet tall, so she was fine as a stormtrooper. But check out me as Darth Vader. I don't know why I was wearing bed socks, but it was floods. I couldn't sit down, but it was fun. And
the black.
Yeah, I always love that memory.
That's very cool. I don't even want the forecast after that. I need that picture. I'm going to tweet it out.
Oh, no.
Thank you, Colette.
Yeah.
That is our show for tonight. Thank you for joining us. Mike Wise is off, so Chris Glover will have your next local news tonight after the National at 11. We will see you back here tomorrow at 6. No Darth Vader costume for Colette, I promise. Have a great night, everybody.